We're recording and we'll get started with week 1 for social media metrics and ROI. And we're going to talk this week about measuring relationships and getting started with your Google Analytics. So when we measure relationships for PR, there's a term that's been thrown around now for the last, let's say, 5 years called social media ROI. ROI refers to return on investment. This is actually a finance term. So what are we talking about when we're talking about social media? Something that's very hard to quantify and something generally that companies aren't making a huge investment in comparatively. Well, for social media, a good way to think of the word ROI is return on influence, right? What type of return are we getting on the influence that our social media has, the public relations? And this isn't something that comes immediately. It's not like marketing and advertising where I say, okay, well, I'm going to do an ad campaign over the next month and I'm going to promote, let's say it's my tour business, and I'm going to promote a discount for a certain tour. And if this discount is successful and this ad campaign is successful, what I should see is an immediate increase in sales. Public relations doesn't work that way, and especially not when we're working through social media. So what we have to think about is brand awareness. Are we creating brand awareness? Do more people know about our brand now? How do we quantify that? Through our followers. If somebody pushed like on your Facebook page or is now following you on Instagram, they know who your brand is. They know about that brand now. Maybe they didn't know about it before. Also, sharing is a way to measure. So again, I can use this in conjunction with my marketing, and I put up 10% discount on our super awesome monkey tour, and I put this on Facebook for free to the 5,000 followers or whatever, and they share. I see, okay, well, had I not had that Facebook page, that wouldn't have been shared for free to somebody else. And so again, the influence is there. That person is becoming a brand ambassador for me. And that's number 3, creating those brand ambassadors. So the more you engage with people on social media and they become your friend because your photos are so cool or whatever that is, the more you're creating that brand awareness and brand ambassadors, and you're doing it all for free in a way. So what is return on influence? We talked a little bit already. It's return on engagement, return on the conversions that you get. Often when people like your Facebook page or your Instagram account or Twitter, wherever you are, they're going to go over to your website. And if you have a website that has been monetized in some way, maybe you do online sales or even you have ads that are running on there, you've created a conversion. Now, ultimately, if you are selling something, you want to convert that to a sale. And there is a way to set that up in Google Analytics that you can say in Google Analytics, okay, if somebody clicks on this link and they get to the final link that says, thank you for your purchase, I know I've made a sale and the average amount of that sale is, let's say, $50, then it's easy to quantify that. And that is something that you would want to show a CEO. But how do we measure something like influence? Well, we start by setting goals, right? We're going to look, and by the end of this class, you're going to know how to create a social media strategy that has goals that you can track. One of the ways that you track them is through something called key performance indicators. So we're going to look at how many likes did we get, how many tweets did we get, retweets, and those types of conversions. So this is both qualitative and quantitative. We know when we do research, there's 2 types. Qualitative type research is based on a type of conversation, a feel that you have about something. If we went out into the field and we were anthropologists, we would say, well, we're going to do qualitative research, and I'm going to go to the Amazon and study these people, and I'm going to take notes, and that's going to be my qualitative research. When we do quantitative research, we actually put a number value to everything, and we're able to do that. So it's not as easy as marketing ROI, as I said, because you don't have that definite quantitative fact all the time. So you have to learn how to translate the value of social media to the C-suite. And the next question presented there is, what is a social media investment? So since I have you on here, Steve, what do you think? What would do you think is a social media investment?
Well, it's time and money that you spend, to develop the content and place it online.
Right, that's exactly right. And so when we're looking at that, we have to look at the time. If it's you and you have your own business startup and you say, I'm going to have to do this all myself because I can't hire a social media team. You still want to be able to quantify your sweat equity, right? Sweat
Hmm.
equity in business terms, and you may already know this, but for the rest of the audience who views this later, sweat equity means I know that my time is worth X amount of dollars. Let's say it's worth $50 an hour, right? So I know my time is worth $50 an hour. And if I put 10 hours a week into social media, that's $500. That's what I invested in. That counts. That in any kind of business term, sweat equity always counts, and you need to be accountable for it because then you can calculate the ROI of that. You can say, well, if I had to replace myself, how much does this cost? And that type of thing. So you're absolutely right that the time is important, and then anything you use to create content. So, as an example, we are doing a social media campaign that revolves around a series of YouTube videos, and for that, we're on a budget, but we have to hire a videographer and an editor to do these things. So that would be an investment we make
Hmm.
to create the content.
Isn't there also like an out-of-pocket I mean, excuse me, an opportunity expense because, your time could also be spent doing something else, which is kind of that's kind of the way we looked at it when we did marketing mix analysis. If you have, it's almost like the dollar you have, you could spend it on advertising, you could spend it on social media, you could spend it on promotions. Where does it get you the best return?
Yes, that's actually a really good point. Opportunity expense. And you have to look at that and say, do I want to spend it on public relations? Is that the best value? Or should I spend it on pay per click advertising? And you have to make that call. Now, was it not you who wrote in your mastery journal that Bill Gates said he would spend his last dollar on public relations?
I don't think it was.
It wasn't? Okay, so
No.
it was one of my students who just wrote in their mastery journal that, as Bill Gates said, if he only had $1 left, he would spend it on public relations. And I mean, why do you think he said that instead of marketing? What's the value of public relations rather than marketing?
I think you create a relationship, and there's a third party credibility that comes from public relations that doesn't come from straight advertising because people, I think, generally mistrust advertisers. Obviously they're going to say the very best they can about their brands, and they're not going to be pragmatic or real about it that the way that a third party speaking on behalf of your brand might be.
Exactly. The public is really smart and they know very well when they're being sold. Especially Americans. Have grown up in a consumer economy and we're the world's biggest consumers. However, we know very well when we're being advertised to and that somebody wants us to buy this if they've paid for an ad. Um, so building that relationship, you hit on that key word. There's the trust value there that comes with public relations that doesn't come with advertising. In the name of what we do is that word relations. So you're building that relationship and it's more long term than an ad. Apple is great at building relationships
Mhm.
and they've put it into everything that they do with their brand to the point that people are Apple users. I mean, they're part of like this giant Apple family, and so we have to consider that when we look at social media. If you look at this is called a Venn diagram. And if you look at this Venn diagram, what you're seeing here is that social media goals and objectives often overlap within different departments, right? So you've got your marketing department that's looking for leads and conversions. Customer service, definitely. I don't know about you, but I have a couple times when an airlines hasn't done well by me, tweeted something about it, right? So that's part of a customer service. And if they're good, they're going to respond properly to that. So have you ever had that experience yet that you felt like you weren't being treated well by a company and you use social media for it?
I can't say that I've ever done it that way. I've been on the receiving end,
Mhm.
and happily it's been very complimentary, happy stuff that we've gotten back from for the team, for the airshow team. But no, I've not taken pen in hand myself.
Not yet.
Not
Well,
yet.
that's a really good point that you say, being on the happy receiving end, because reviews are a huge part of customer service and public relations. I mean, it's a huge part of what everybody's doing today. And if you're doing it well, when you get a great review or a compliment as the public relations manager or whatever you do, you always respond to that as well. You don't
Hmm.
respond to just the people that you're like, okay, I got to put out a fire here and there's a problem. You respond to everybody, right? You want to give this idea of we're all friends here. But
Hmm.
yeah, people use social media a lot as a customer service tool. I'll tell you one of the best examples that I saw. So uh, last year, we had a lot of elections last year in 2016. A lot. And during the middle of the year, one local sheriff was campaigning where I live. There were signs for him all over the place. And as I was driving home one day, this car literally ran me off the road. I had to like drive in the dirt, and thank God there was some dirt there. And I realized as this car that was passing me, it drove by and nearly killed me, that it had a vote for so and so sheriff giant sticker on the back of the window of this SUV. And I thought, seriously? Vote this guy, I thought he was the sheriff, right? How he just ran me off the road. So I went on Twitter and I wrote, at so and so sheriff, because he was doing all social media, all this campaigning, just ran me off the road on this road, blah, 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 white SUV. Wait, what do you say? The sheriff actually tweeted back and said, I'm so sorry. And, a lot of people are out there campaigning for me. That wasn't my personal car, but I think I know who it was. And please, please accept my sincerest apologies. I've safety first, kind of a thing. Um,
Right.
and that it changed my thinking about that sheriff. I thought, this guy really does care. And so somebody was careless, that was campaigning for him, but I didn't see it as a reflection on him. Had he not replied to the tweet, had I not tweeted and got that response, it would have been different. So big part of customer service, especially, I mean, we can see in politics that social media is huge and it's not going away. It started to become big back in 2008 and it's just getting bigger and bigger. And then, of course, branding. Branding is a public relations facet that we really use with social media. And especially with social media, you get a chance to really give a voice to your brand. I think that's so important. Your air show stuff is a great example of a brand that you could give a voice to, right? What
Hmm.
does that sound like? I mean, who are we talking to and how does that resonate?
Yeah, and it's all fun stuff. It's not, it's not heavy stuff like politics or anything. Honestly, it's should be fairly easy to do, right?
Right. Well, I would think, anything that has to do with entertainment, of making
Hmm.
people happy, you're giving them that wow factor. I saw the other day, I was watching some TV show about cars that my kids love. And a
Hmm.
segment of the TV show was it wasn't the Royal Air Force, but it was a British air show type of a thing. And, I thought to myself about that Airplanes movie, that Airplanes cartoon that the
Sure.
kids have. I think it is
Hmm.
called Airplanes. Anyway,
Hmm.
all of the airplanes from different countries had, their own accent wherever, the Indian one, she sounded Indian, really beautiful. And there was a British one and he looked like an old sort of World War II, I don't know, P1 or whatever they had back then. Some little thing
Sure.
with one propeller. And anyway, he had a little mustache and he was very British. And I just thought about that in terms of branding of, well, what would these airplanes sound like, these real ones, if they were talking? And I think that that's a good way to think about your brand. What do they sound like? How do they talk? If these are American airplanes, do they have some sort of, I don't know, cowboy, old west? I mean, I guess we think of Maverick sometimes when we think of fighter
Hmm.
pilot. and the Top Gun type thing. So that's up to you, but you can give them a voice.
Hmm.
So where do you begin with measurement? Well, PR is about building the relationship and building the reputation. So can we measure a relationship with social media? What do you think? We've
Yep.
talked about it a little bit.
I think absolutely. If you look at some of the measures, some of the ways we've already talked about it, you can.
Right. We can say, how many times am I getting shared? What's the sentiment, right? Even on Facebook, whether you're doing live now or just posting a static photograph, if somebody loves it, they can use the heart. They can,
Hmm.
put the frowny face and whatever they want. But then, so how do we measure reputation? I already touched on this a little bit.
Well, I think reputation is it's harder to do for sure. It's also kind of, isn't it more of kind of what they're saying, not not the generally the quantity of what they're saying, but the character of what they're saying.
The character
Um,
and the context for sure when we're talking about reputation. But a really
hmm.
easy way to think about it is the review process that I mentioned. You know that if you're going to go, let's say you're going on a vacation and you're on TripAdvisor and you think, oh,
Hmm.
I'd like to go to the something something resort, and you immediately look and that resort has, five 3-star reviews right on the top. You're
Hmm.
judging the reputation of that hotel by those 3-star reviews. If it has all 5-star reviews, you say, oh, great, they don't get any complaints, and there's a discount, so I'm going. So that's how you.
But you also find yourself saying, okay, how many reviewers participated? And so if they've got a high number of stars and a high number of reviewers, you
Mhm.
put a lot of credibility in what's being said.
Right, exactly right. I don't know what it was. Oh, it was an Airbnb. My husband and I were looking at it.
Hmm.
And there was an Airbnb. It was a tree house. It was quite interesting, and it had 923 reviews. And it had a really high, like 4.5, maybe 5 stars. I remember it was quite high. But I thought, well, people must love
Nice.
that tree house. That was
Yeah,
my
nice.
my initial thought for that. So yeah, and that's how we state our relationship in numbers, right? So again, when we're thinking about, okay, what do we do with this measuring ROI and why are we doing this? Well, a lot of us are either going to be explaining to clients why they should keep paying us and using our services, or we're going to be
Hmm.
explaining to a CEO why I need my staff and why you need to continue to give me a budget for this. And really, the CEO, the CFO, and those type of people in the C-suite, they really want you to justify the numbers. And if you can't, well, so, sometimes some people are out of a job. So that's why we explain all of this. And we have a lot of tools to measure social media engagement. We've talked about Google Analytics. We have Facebook Insights. There is analytics software out there that you can pay. I mean, some of it with a pretty steep price tag, but it will analyze, everything that you're doing on social media and give recommendations and that type of thing. I've looked at most of them, but for free, Google Analytics is still a really powerful tool. And I think it's a standard for what people are looking for. And our social proofs, when you hear somebody mention social proofs, that means, things like your star ratings, your reviews, your shares. These are things that prove that what's happening in social media, what you're doing, is garnering that reputation that you want, that we talked about.
Hmm.
So when we look at Google Analytics, there's a few things that it can measure for us: web traffic, social referrals, and conversions. We talked about that. Conversions are definable and measurable. I mentioned to you about the URL that you can put in there. Also on the Google Analytics conversions, because conversions is an option that you put when you're saying, okay, I want Google Analytics to measure this for me. You can customize it quite highly. So some things you might look for are URLs, an e-commerce page. Time on page is something that you want to look at. How long did somebody spend on a page of my website? If you're creating your content properly, they should be spending about 2 minutes. 2 minutes is kind of a golden number in web time, where you want to maintain that audience and retain them for 2 minutes. When you start to do that, it gives you kind of a plus in the Google algorithm. And the Google algorithm says, oh, well, people stay on this site for at least 2 minutes on average. So therefore, it must have some good content. I will move it up in the ranks. And that's how you begin to move up in SERPs, in your search engine
Hmm.
page rank. So, and then also if you have something that's a download, that's something that you could put into Google Analytics and say, I want to know how many people downloaded this. So let's talk about your assignment. This week, you're going to go into Google Analytics and you're going to describe some of the data that you find in there. Now, you said that you are tracking data in your Google Analytics. Is that correct?
Yeah, I successfully got that paired up a week or so ago.
Okay,
Already a lot of numbers.
oh, good. Great. If there's a lot of numbers, that's great because it's easier for you. You know, when you only have a few numbers, it's kind of hard to analyze and go, well,
Hmm.
what's happening here? When you've got a lot of numbers, you've got more data to work with. Again, if we go to statistics, you've got a big sample size and you say, well, you know, based on this, what do I think this means? But good. So you can work with your own numbers for students who don't have very much data. I leave one of my websites, the login and that type of thing for students who need some help, maybe for whatever reason Google Analytics wasn't installed correctly. So that's available to you. I'll give you a hint that the first question asks you to name some of the things like bounce rate and different things that you'll find in Google Analytics, but also to describe what that is. Some people miss that. They don't read the question fully and they just say, okay, well, some of the things I'm looking for are time on page, bounce rate, page views, but then they just kind of make a list. What you want to do is actually describe what that means. And then for your discussion, I actually have a new discussion for this week. So bear with me and we're going to go
Can
into.
I ask one question while you're looking for that?
Sure.
When will we get kind of rules of thumb, for example, bounce rate? Well, your bounce rate should be X percent or Y percent. You know, right now I have, I know what my bounce rate is, and I don't know if it's good or bad, to be honest with you.
Well, what is your bounce rate?
It's like 40%.
That's great. That's great. I definitely, anything that's under 50% is
Okay.
pretty good. A high bounce rate is starting to be like maybe 65 and above. I've had websites that have, in the 80s before, and I'm looking and thinking,
Hmm.
why is this in the 80s? And
Because your landing page could be better. I mean, I
that's
think I
what
read that somewhere.
Right. That's what you have to analyze. And you also have to make sure that, how have you titled that page, right? So what
Okay.
is the title of that page? And did I really call this page what it is, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because if I called it something slightly different and I'm giving people the perception that they're going to find, let's say I put, for whatever reason, I put kayaking lessons on one of my pages, but then they click on and it's really, a kayaking tour that isn't really about, how to.
Hmm.
They're going to realize it. They're going to find out in seconds that this is the wrong thing and they're going to bounce out. Right. So that's what we don't want to have. I have a website that has a really low bounce rate, just under 10%. And I didn't design it myself, actually. I had a designer, really well known WordPress designer, template designer. I hired him. He lives in Malaysia, actually. And I hired him, and the bounce rate on that is so low. What I realized he did is he created the layout of it in such a way that it almost forces you to go somewhere else. And
Hmm.
so, that's a really good idea is if, on that landing page, you have calls to action. Want to know more about something awesome? Click here, right? Don't give them all the information on the first page. Have somewhere else to click. Although you have to be careful with that because too many clicks can be death for you. You don't want to annoy your users, but if you can just
Hmm.
get them to go on to another page, it really decreases the bounce rate and that's good uh,
Hmm.
for you. So for this week, we are looking at, hold on, I want to make sure I have the right thing here. Oh, I'm in the wrong class. Hold on.
I was gonna say I don't think it's right. Yeah.
Yeah. This is, I clicked onto, I told you I had a new one. I clicked onto the December class. For some reason, it was there on default. So let's go to February. I knew I was looking at it and saying, this seems very familiar, but not in the way that I want it to be. I had some theoretical stuff on there that was good, but we have over the break while you guys are on winter break, we always have time, and it's a great time in New Year to kind of update things. And so I did something that I thought you guys would get a little bit more out of. I just gotta move this out of the way a little bit. And then we are going to preview and talk about it. So this should be out of your online textbook. And remember that
Mhm.
you have to be in FS Connect to get into your online textbook. But this is section 8. It's called Master of Metrics. And so really along the same lines as what we're doing in virtual class today. It's talking to you about how to translate metrics to a C-suite. Why are web analytics important? There's a 6-step metric process. I'm really fascinated by questions 4 and 5, the 3 phases of participation in social media. I think this is really important to think about. What's the difference between if we want to inform, inspire, and then engage? And every industry has a time window that we're talking about in terms of touch points where we communicate to people. So for example, I work in the tourism industry. One of my companies is here in Florida. And I know that when people want to book a vacation in Florida, they start to do their research maybe 8 to 6 months away from the time that they actually come here. So that's kind of the informed stage, right? So I'm going to create some content that just lets people know here's something really cool you could do in Florida. And then, in a certain stage of the relationship, I'm going to start to inspire that group and then really actively engage them later on in participating. We do everything in our company. We get people to do video interviews of how did they like that, and then they can share it with their friends, or let's share your photos with me, and then share also with your friends. So we really try to create brand ambassadors. And of course, doing something like outdoor adventure is a perfect format for that. People want to share their adventures. And then you'll read an interview by a really, really well-known public relations specialist, Sholani Burke. She works for ABC. She's written a lot of books. That's in your part, in your text. And then the next 7 through 8 are about your final project, which we talked about. Your final project, you can choose a brand, a product, or a person to promote, but it can't be your personal brand. So
Mhm.
it can't be you promoting yourself, right? We have a few students who are maybe models or actors or something like that, and we always just kind of say, no, that's not going to be of great value to you. So let's focus it on something else. It has to be within the guidelines of your Full Sail handbook for projects. Basically, it has to be PG, 13, not offensive to anybody, and that type of thing. Well, we do have to say it sometimes. And it must be something that you can create original multimedia content about for you. I'm not worried if you do anything with the airplanes or similar.
Mhm.
That you're going to have to do some video interviews, have some photos, and work on some social media campaigns. And then it gets approved by the PRMA faculty. And so I kind of pre-approve it, and then it'll get also approved by Ginger Palmisano. And you'll also see me in month 12. So basically, what I do is I start you guys off and say, I'm going to kick you off for your final project. And then you see me again in month 12. And I actually look at your final project and, see what you did with your online campaign. And then I help you develop your thesis, your written thesis, which will end up being about 20 pages. But what we're going to do is save all of the work that you've done over the next 6 months so that you don't actually have to write 20 pages, right? So part of your final thesis will say, report, what was your strategy for this, right? Well, in this
Hmm.
class, in week 4, you do a social media strategy. So hopefully you can keep that assignment, rework anything that I give you comments on. And by month 12, you've got a social media strategy that you can pop into your thesis paper. Of course, you're going to have to, change it up a little bit, but you won't have to reinvent the wheel. So keep that in mind. Definitely ask your instructors as you're going along. Is this part of the final thesis? And they'll be able to tell you. I will tell you a lot of what you write in your next class will be part of it, and probably your events class. And then you'll do your project, your online portfolio in month 11 with Miss Latoya Lee. She'll help you with that. So the whole system is set up to help you succeed with it. And my advice is keep all of your work that you do, keep it in a folder. Actually, Ginger Palmisano has you set up a folder to keep things in. And then when you get that feedback from your instructors, immediately go back and go, oh, I need to change this. She said this, this, and this wasn't right, even though I got my grade. Change it up so that when you hand it in month 12, you're not going, okay, wait, what was wrong with this? And then I have to grade that thing again. So if you get an 85 the first time, you don't want that 85 to carry over again in month 12. You want to touch it up. So it's great. So um, that's it. That's it. You need to have a plan B, backup plan. Sounds like you have several plans for yourself.
Hmm.
That's the discussion. Fairly straightforward. Do you have any questions?
No, I'm pretty good with this. It's straightforward and easy to do.
Great, great. Well, I look forward to seeing your assignment and your discussion post. And if you don't have any further questions, we're done for today.
Super. Thank you for your time.
Okay, you two have a great evening.
All right, you too. Bye bye.